World War I was not just a war fought in trenches and under the relentless fire of artillery. It wasn't simply a struggle with spears and barbed wire. This was also a financial, economic war, a battle over gold reserves, bond markets, central banks, and the shadowy financiers who never stepped foot on the battlefield, but were calculating behind the scenes. While soldiers paid the price with their lives, bankers and leaders only dealt with numbers on paper. What was done during this period not only determined who would win or lose, but also reshaped global financial systems, and continues to affect us today. If you think that war was only about politics and the military, you are mistaken. World War I showed that money is an immensely powerful weapon. And this weapon was one of the most aggressive ever invented. By 1914, Europe was already in a state of great tension. National rivalries, colonial ambitions, and military alliances had turned the continent into an alarm bell. But beneath all the honor and imperial confidence, there was another reality. Financing such a massive war required vast amounts of money. And the worst part was this. The war's start actually marked the beginning of borrowing. Every soldier sent to the front was pushing the nation into a massive economic burden that would later be paid off by the people. In the beginning, governments thought the war would end quickly, perhaps by Christmas. The war was believed to be financeable through traditional means, gold, limited borrowing, and public donations. However, within weeks, this idea was shattered. The war was burning through far more money than anticipated. In the summer of 1914, Europe's financial market system was still based on the gold standard. Governments promised to convert their paper currencies into real gold, which created a strong sense of trust in the currencies. But this approach heavily restricted the governments. Gold reserves were limited, and printing money constantly would mean losing the trust of the public and creditors. While Britain, France, and Germany had enough economic power to support their currencies, their gold reserves quickly began to deplete as they sought to finance the war. By the end of 1914, Germany was spending about 10 million marks per day, and Britain was spending £2.5 million daily. The accounts were ruthless. Gold wouldn't be enough. Governments began to temporarily suspend the rules. One by one, the major nations abandoned the gold standard and turned their money into a promise based solely on trust in the government. That moment, when the gold standard was abandoned, marked a significant turning point in modern financial history. A new era began where money and power were shaped not by gold, but by printed currency, credit, and market trust. Once governments discovered this new freedom, they never returned to the old ways. The financial war had only just begun. Germany had been isolated from global financial markets and was under siege by the British Navy. The only solution was internal borrowing. Berlin constantly pushed the public to take war credits. Patriotic posters and campaigns calling for sacrifices led the public to invest their money. With this method, Germany raised a total of 100 billion marks, but these debts were built on nothing more than hope. When Germany lost the war, these bonds lost their value and millions of Germans lost their life savings. Britain had a significant advantage. London was the world's financial center. The pound was considered safe, and Britain's influence was felt worldwide. Initially, the government relied on short-term domestic borrowing, treasury bills, and appealing to the public for patriotic support. But as the war dragged on, they turned to much larger debts. This was when America entered the scene. In 1914, the U.S. was officially neutral, but American banks saw this as a major opportunity. Banks like J.P. Morgan and Company became financial saviors for Britain and France. By 1917, even though America had not yet entered the war, Wall Street had been financing the Allies' war expenses for years. This wasn't charity, it was strategy and power. By the end of the war, America had gone from being a debtor nation to the world's largest creditor. France followed a similar strategy. It financed the war through both internal and external debt, but often relied heavily on American banks for support. Like Britain, France became financially dependent on America. This dependence affected post-war politics and led to a major debt crisis. And don't forget, this wasn't just about reparations or stock market crashes. It was also about the debt problem caused by the war. These debts would continue to burden Europe for many years. In the end, with the conclusion of World War I, the world underwent a significant transformation, not just on the battlefield but in the financial world as well. Even today, governments use tactics similar to those of the past to address economic crises. Borrowing, printing money, and propaganda used to persuade the public. These tactics are still prevalent in today's crises. Governments somehow shift these debts onto future generations, and we are the ones who end up paying the price. The scars from this financial war still affect our lives today. As we live through this situation, it's important to remember the events of the past. In 1914, when governments abandoned the gold standard, they promised it was temporary. Today, similarly, governments continue to say this is temporary. Back then, millions of people believed with confidence that everything would get better. However, in the end, the money they held lost its value. Today, we are living through the same thing. The hidden financial battle behind the war is not just a part of history. It forms the foundation of today's reality. If you learn anything from this account, remember this. When money detaches from its purpose, it becomes a tool of exploitation. And the only thing that can change this is history and awareness.